Yes, well, good afternoon. Good afternoon, good afternoon, good evening. And oh yeah, good morning to our two boys that are joining us. Thank you. Well, yes. It's true, it's true. This was sponsored by one of you, so I guess that makes sense. So today, boys and girls, we are going to be talking about something very near and dear to my heart, which is Occam's razor. Uh, well, it surprisingly enough, it is actually near and dear to my heart for a lot of reasons. Just one quick second. Ow. Anyway, there we go. It is near and dear to my heart for a lot of reasons, but the primary one is actually that um, it is a beautiful mathematical representation of the human condition. It Occam's razor, above all else, is a way to describe humanity desperately trying to make things more complicated for itself than it has to be. Does that kind of make sense? That is yeah. Exactly. Exactly, right? Like so and we will touch on fake examples that I will be sharing. Actually give me one quick second. Let me just say just hold. Yeah. Okay. And so for particular reasons for myself at least, Occam's razor remains one of the most important things in this world. Uh, and it explains a lot of why we tend to believe in conspiracy theories. It explains a lot of those particulars because it's essentially an aggregate of all of these little things that make us that bias us as humanity towards the more complex. Just ignore that. There were I don't know if you guys could hear that, but some kids were screaming outside, and so anyway, so Occam's razor, right? And Occam's razor is has a very simple definition, at least in my mind. Let's make this smaller. Um, the simplest explanation is most often the correct. Or let's change that around. Excuse me. The correct explanation is usually the simplest one. There we go. Right? And so this is going to be our thesis for basically this entire broadcast. And it's this idea that as humans, we tend to forget this, even though we shouldn't. But we do. We forget it all the bloody time, right? And so what really does that mean? That means do I need to write this out? No, I'm going to draw it out. Give me one quick second. I didn't break anything, it's okay. It's just the office. There's nothing breakable at the office, don't worry about it. Okay, so what does that really mean? Well, this is fine. So say we have an event. Not like that, like this, right? We have an event of a final event. So let's call this final event, for lack of a better word. It could be everything from like from presidency to Bill Clinton suddenly coming out as a. Never mind. We're not. We're not going to go there. Yes. So one of our viewers had a very interesting dream, and this was just a little bit of an inside joke. So what does that mean in the aggregate? Well, actually, let me just check. Our sound is fine. What does that mean in aggregate? The correct explanation is usually the simplest one, and so by that, what I mean is, oops, let's do this. Copy this. By that I mean a event that can be caused by causation A. Let's put it that way. An event that can be caused directly by a single causation is usually stronger or more likely to have happened than an event that is caused by multiple things. So let's do this first. Arrow 5%. There we go. Oops. There we go. Okay. So, oops. Let's do this. Blah blah blah. Excellent. And let's call this B C. We've talked about this, yes, in the past, but I just want to put it down formally into essentially into text because this is important, and you lot keep messing it up and trying to justify whatever on the bloody Discord by trying to pull this out, and half of you always get it wrong. Anyway, well, it's not my fault that you guys get it wrong, right? Big point. I am the teacher. Anyway, we'll gloss over that. We'll gloss over that. The point is that we'll call this. We'll call this. Not like that. Give me 1 second. See through. We'll have that width of, let's say, 3. Oops. 3, and then we'll call this branch A. Ugh. Oh, come on. Excuse me. Yeah, I assume you guys are watching this just to watch me struggle. We'll call this branch A. Call this branch B. Right? So for I think when we put it like this, it should be rather obvious that branch A is probably looks simpler than branch B. And don't worry, we'll talk about this in more detail. So Occam's razor would state that the correct explanation is usually the simpler one, and in this case, I think it's self-evident. Hi, you, whose name I still cannot pronounce, and I am going to still work on that pronunciation, and I will only say it once I'm able to pronounce it properly. one of our public school classmates. So, Occam's razor essentially would say that branch A would be the simpler explanation because it is less complicated, or would more likely be the simpler explanation because it is less complicated, right? So, hold on, what am I saying? It's been a long day. Branch A would be the more likely to be correct explanation. There we go. More correct explanation because it is simpler, and therefore it has a higher likelihood of working. Now, why? And that's an excellent question. You may. I wish you would ask, but I know most of you don't actually ask. But Muses, why would that be? Well, my friend, my not listening friends. All right, I have to open that up. There we go. Okay, so in slide 2, we'll talk about exactly why that is. Okay. Excellent, everything's locked down. Good. Okay, so let's talk about why that is. And it has intrinsically something to do with probability and numbers, and it's always numbers. So let's add this in. Probability, right? The simpler explanation is more probable. And let me demonstrate why. Right? So say our branch A, causation A, creating the final event, has a let's say 60% chance of happening, right? There's a 60% chance of happening. So it doesn't sound very big, and it certainly it feels like there isn't any like that's just barely above half and half, right? Like 60% is pretty small in terms of probabilities. And now let's say that each of these branches in branch B actually has an 80% chance of happening. Does that we're all understanding what I'm talking about here, right? So there's an 80% chance for causation B to cause causation C. There's another 80% chance, if causation C happens, for causation D to happen. And on top of that, there's a third 80% chance, if we have causation D, that the final event will happen, right? So for those of us who are not well versed in mathematics, or even for a lot of people who are, but who just don't really have a good idea of probability, this might make it look like, hey, look, branch B looks like it's much more likely to happen. But obviously this is where I'm trying to get to. That's patently untrue, right? It's absolutely untrue that branch B is the better branch, because branch B, when we actually look at it, has much lower probability of happening than branch A, even though branch A is already low, right? Even though branch A already has 60%, only has 60% chance of happening, let's actually look at the probability as it's projected down each particular branch. So obviously it's easy to see that causation C has 80% chance of happening, right? Because there's only one number. So what is the probability of causation D happening? Well, in this case, it's actually causation D itself is actually a 64% chance, right? Because it's 80% chance of an 80% chance. So let's put it like this: 80% of 80%. I'm going to need some wrong keyboard layout. So 80% of 80% is 64%, and the reason we can get to that fairly simply is we can just do 0.8, which is obviously 80%, times 0.8, which is another 80%, which gives us 0.64, right? That's just math, and that's how percentages work. Percentages, 100% would in this case actually just be the number 1, right? Now 1.0, and so 0.8 times 0.8 is 0.64. And given that causation D is only 64% accurate, right? Like that's suddenly it's looking a little bit iffy, right? And if you do the math again, which I will actually get a calculator to do because I don't feel like doing that mentally. 0.64 times 0.8. That's a 51.2% chance going from causation D to the final event, right? So let me just take this, put this over here. And so 80% of 64% is a 51.2% chance of happening. Right? So let's be very, very clear about suddenly what has happened. All down the chain. So let's say B. Ooh, hello. Okay. This drawing tablet is can you rotate back, please? Reset rotation. There we go. Okay. So we know that branch A is 60% probability of happening. Makes sense, I hope. And branch B, now we know, is 51.2% chance of happening. So even though the entire branch down branch B looks amazing, right? It looks great. It looks like there's 80% chance of happening. There's another 80% chance of happening. And yet, because... Oops. Oh. Okay, I'm going to turn touch off. There we go. Okay. And yet, because there are a few branches, suddenly the 80% chance that looked like it was great is now no longer actually quite as likely to happen as a single causative event like branch A. And so that's, again, if we move back to I can't. And paste it here. Pasting it here, right? Just pasting it back here. The correct explanation is usually the simplest one, and branch A is by far simpler than branch B. And so, yes, you're right. You're right. So just because something has a 60% chance of happening and something else has a 51.2% of chance of happening doesn't mean branch B is wrong. But which one of these two is more likely to be correct? And in this case, it is 60, right? Because the probability of it being correct is higher, or the probability of it happening. That doesn't mean that it's always going to be the correct answer. But let's be very clear. Usually, if I could only draw a square properly, usually the simplest one, the correct explanation, right? Does that kind of make sense? And so when you start adding statistics into your thoughts, and you of course 100% you have to have correct statistics. If your statistics are wrong, if your understanding of the world and the facts that happen within the world is wrong, then this doesn't help you. And we'll get to that. Right? This doesn't help you at all because you're what did I just do? Oh, we're good. Okay. Because if it's just wrong, then you're not really, shall we say, you're not really, you don't have a good concept of what the correct probabilities are, right? And I'm not saying it's easy. No, not at all. But it's easier for me to accept this than it would be easier for me to accept this half, if that makes sense, right? And so you can call me a simpleton all you like. This is the cold hard truth that the numbers do not lie, right? The numbers cannot lie. Like, the numbers will never lie. So essentially what I'm saying with this is, if I toss a coin 1,000 times, if I toss a coin 1,000 times for both branch A and for the events in branch B, if I toss a coin 1,000 times, branch A will be correct 600 times, and branch B will be correct 512 times. And if each of those branches pays out $1, I would choose branch A, right? Because you're up $98, 88. Yeah, you can go ahead and laugh at me for that. But yes, you would be up $88 for choosing branch A. just like, I mean, there is a saying that I'm very fond of. It's you can go against anything, just don't go against. Never mind. Actually, I don't want to go against that saying. It's a very capitalist saying, so we'll take it away. But the point is, because of that, right? Like, if you were to bet on branch A, you would win more than you would if you bet on branch B. So why wouldn't you? And we'll get to that. Yes, exactly. Because you don't understand the probabilities behind it, right? Well, I don't want to say you, but yeah, you. Exactly the person who was just talking. Well, that's the mathematics portion now, and now we can talk about some examples if you like, right? Like, I know the math is, I mean, the math shouldn't be that hard. Like, you can punch this into your own calculator. It's like this is simple multiplication, right? Let me just double check that my math correct. Yeah, 0.64 times 0.8, done. 512. Yeah, go ahead, punch it in the calculator. And like, what are you going to do for a calculator for this? There's nothing. So there's no real math in this, right? It's just it's the ability for you to understand that 3 times 80% is much lower number than 1 times 60. Oops, 1 times 60%, simply because these, okay, one stipulation, and that is that these events themselves are not independent, right? So C can only happen if B happens, and D can only happen if C happens, and the final event can only happen if D happens, right? Like, that is the stipulation here, because if they are all independent, then it doesn't matter. Then D can happen whenever, and if D can happen whenever and has an 80% chance of causing the final event, then obviously you would choose D. Even I would choose D, right? Like 100%. But then that would mean that these two branches, are useless, right? Actually, let me, or no, let me do this. Linked. And this is particularly important when we talk about things like conspiracy theories, because conspiracy theories all depend on the events themselves being linked together. If they're not linked together, well, that's the point. Exactly. The less moving parts, the less points of failure. You can think of it that way, but it's actually much more fundamental than that. It's well, ish. That is a great mechanical engineering analogy that one of our public school classmates just made, which coincidentally is better than most of the bloody examples that you private school kids have been making. So, in a machine, like, why are traditional cars so much more prone to failure and breakdown than electric cars? Because the electric car has literally 2 motors or 3 motors or 1 motor, and so it has a single moving part. So you don't need, all of the grease, you don't need all of the maintenance for all of the little bits in the center, you don't need to think about the valves, right? Like, all of that is suddenly just completely decreased, and therefore the electric cars, generally speaking, slightly more reliable. But in this case, I would argue the mathematics is much more fundamental than that. And the reason for that is just simply that, like, to me, math is sort of a platonic idealization of what can happen in nature, right? Obviously, in nature, things are never going to be this clear cut. Absolutely not, right? Absolutely not. So then in nature you would never see 80 80 80 whatever, but the idea behind it is exactly the same. Anyway, let's talk about the events are linked. So if the events are not linked, let me just put in a big old cross over here. Big old cross, there we go. Make it red. Why isn't it red? Make it red. There we go. Big old funnels. Okay. I don't know why I just said that. Then these things don't exist, right? And in that case, yeah, 100% you would choose branch. Let's make a new branch here. The math is the reason for the mechanical rule. Absolutely, absolutely. You know, Nona, for being a filthy environmentalist major, you're still actually quite good. let's do this. Also not filthy. Let's call it green. Yes, let's go with that. And so if B, C, and D are not linked, right? If they're not linked, of course you would choose D, because branch D would give you a chance of winning of 80%, right? Like I think that's self-explanatory. So by having, if the events were not linked, B, C, and D, then it doesn't matter. Then obviously you would choose D. Does that? You were damn good at statistics. I'm happy for you. I was terrible at statistics. I'm basically the worst person to teach statistics ever, and yet here I am. Yeah, why don't you go find a different teacher? Eh? I don't give money. I don't. You're just clogging up my server with all these useless little conversations. Examples. And so the examples that we're going to go through are going to be completely unrelated to life, universe, or anything. I'm not going to pull real examples from the real world, simply because that's probably not cool. Well, no, it's because I don't actually know many real life conspiracy theories, simply because I subscribe so heavily to this. Or oops. Because I subscribe so heavily to this, right? To the idea of probability, to the existence of math. No, math is not my god. Math is fundamental truth. There's a difference between that. And that's a philosophical difference. And I don't know why I'm waving my pen around and debating as if, you know, I was sitting in a coffee shop. And yet here I am. But this is actually a really interesting debate. And sorry to go off tangent for just a moment, but the debate between faith and truth or measurable truth is exactly that, right? Religion demands a certain amount of, shall we say, for the lack of a better word, faith, right? And sort of to demand a certain amount of trust that in the background these things that are said are true, right? And if you actually go into, interestingly enough, if you go into North American conspiracy theories, one of the major claims is exactly that. It is that these people have seen the truth in the and they're sharing it, and they're sharing it with their adherents with the expectation that they trust in their words. And so when the moment you do that, and their adherents are usually people that try to find their own answers. And in the greater Protestant, and here we come to sort of religious influence, in the Protestant mindset, the connection between, and again we're just talking about North America now, so mostly the US, in the Protestant mindset, the connection between the person and God is very personal, and it doesn't depend on the Bible, exactly because the Protestant Reformation happened because the church was corrupt, right? So it asked each of the individual members to find their own connection with God, and through that find their own truths. And that works for faith, because faith is very personal and not and very emotion driven. It is not driven always by measurable fact, and that is there's no way around this discussion if we're going to talk about this, right? So because of that, I know this is a rather long tangent, but because of that, conspiracy theories are and cult-like behavior in America are interestingly enough quite can become broadly popular for that exact reason, because in the American tradition, even though a lot of societies, atheistic, agnostic, doesn't matter, there is that cultural desire to find the truth oneself, right? It comes both from manifest destiny, it comes from the puritanical Protestantism, and all of that. But all of these things together lead us to a world where someone who can get overwhelmed, right? If we we'll come back to the examples. If we go back to this, and either actually let me just zoom out just a little bit. And for someone that is, let's say, is not as comfortable with numbers, right? For someone that is not as comfortable with numbers, would you say, if you showed them this three leaps that require 80% that are 80% likely to happen, I am of the opinion, and I think that's backed up by enough evidence that we can argue it. I can argue it for however long it's necessary, that there is a vast majority of people that would pick branch B if you did not show them this number, the number at the top, right? We've gone through our lives with these numbers so firmly ingrained in our psyche that it's even when I see 80, right? Like I see 80 and 80 is, wow, 80 is amazing. I love 80. And yet it only took 2 extra jumps to go from 80 to 51, right? 1-2 jumps to go from 80% to 51%. And that how many people do you know who are perhaps not so well versed in probability, not so well versed in the actual fact checking? How many people do you know that would actually make those particular logical leaps? Not enough. And so that's why things like branch B can propagate so very, very well. I had an example and I completely forgot it. There was something I wanted to talk about, but I completely forgot. Anyway, so let's. Yes, it's because I'm getting old. Thank you very much. I I don't remember what examples I was going to give. Something about a dog running into a wall. I can't remember. And I can't remember what else I was going to say over here either. Oh my god. No. Okay, so let's use one of the most classical I guess not examples of Occam's razor, but just thing. And that is a Rube Goldberg machine, right? For those of you who don't know what it is, essentially it's a machine that, you know, like you've seen those things where a pebble starts at the top and then it goes through all of these wonderful little phases, and at the very end it does something amazing or not amazing, right? Like it just does something. Why does my curve not have it? Oh, So at any one of these, yeah, it's I'm doing this because I can't remember what my example was. Actually, that's not a bad idea. Since I don't remember my example, someone suggested that we just cut the stream right now. How do we feel about that? Do we have any other questions from our viewers, both public and private? Yeah. Well, because I actually like even the example that I thought of with the Rube Goldberg wouldn't have said anything more interesting than I already did. So, yeah. I'm not going to go into actual conspiracy theories, though. No. Suffice it to say, there are enough. Oh, actually, we could talk about coincidences. Yes, we can. Coincidences. Oops. Focus these two are grouped. So while I'm setting this up, anyone have any more questions? Both from the public and the private schools? No? How can I visualize a coincidence? We'll do it this way. So we'll do. Actually, I'll just copy it over. Why not? Take it, put it here. Okay. So in this case, we would say that, let's say, actually, let's do something. So these two events happen at the same time. Oops. Small dog barks. And if you know my opinion about small dogs, you'll know you'll have a very good idea of what this probability is going to be like. Small dogs, yeah, small dogs are inhumane. Whoever raises small dogs is being very inhumane to what am I saying? Is being very inhumane to dogs and should be taken away for being the monster that they are. Small dog barks, let's say something interesting. Car honks. Yeah. Or no. Yeah, car honks, that's okay. So now we're talking about at one instant in time, right? Instant in time. Dog has a 95% chance of barking. Oops. And the car has a, given that I'm in the middle of the city, let's say, 60% chance of happening. Right? So essentially what we're saying is these two sets of events, completely independent of each other, completely independent, right? Absolutely independent of everything. Like, there's no reason why a small dog barking should make a car honk. There's actually a lot of reason why car honking wouldn't make us. Actually, yeah, we can't do that. Drives down road. It's like every actually, Nona, you say it's rage, but the reason small dogs bark is because they are afraid of everything, because their minds are not capable of understanding the situation in a timely and efficient manner, and there's a very good reason for that. If we accept that dogs came from wolves. If we accept that dogs came from wolves, and I know this is a tangent, just bear with me. If we accept that dogs came, I'm still doing the pen pointing thing. I don't know why. Sorry. If we accept that dogs came from wolves, then what we are saying is that a small dog is technically a wolf that has microcephaly, right? A small dog does not have enough brain size to 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 act properly like a wolf, and therefore it is technically, if we had humans that were like this, if we bred humans to be smaller and smaller, that would be inhumane by definition, and yet we are able to do so with dogs, right? If a human with microcephaly is one of the most tragic things that we can see, because you can see that they're trying their best to understand something. Like a brain mass difference in a human of 10%, of just 10% from the average, deviation from the average, below average, is enough to cause this human to be functionally unable to do many of the things that most of us can do. And that's 10%. Here we are making a dog that has what, like 5% of its brain mass of a wolf. And yes, I realize that this has been done over 20,000 years. But hold on, not 20,000 years, right? About 5,000 years, because we've only really started to have small dogs after the agricultural revolution. Before then, they must have been. So there's no way around it, right? So evolutionarily, that's not enough time for the small dog to really understand, to become, to adjust to its brain size, right? That's not to say that there aren't very intelligent small dogs, but you look at them, like one of the most interesting breeds is a border collie. A border collie is one of the best shepherd dogs that exist, but a border collie will destroy things simply because it does not have control over its own impulses, as well as a wolf, or something bigger like a Saint Bernard, like a lab, like anything. Things that are big, like big dogs are generally, we all know this. Big dogs are smarter. Big dogs are better with children. Big dogs are more able to control their urges, and it's exactly for that reason. It's because they have the brain size to have the frontal cortex to be able to control their more primal evolutionary driven instincts. But for smaller dogs, they don't have that. So they're very much more instinct driven, and so therefore smaller dogs are barking by their collective fear at of their horrible breeding, and not rage, because they don't really understand the difference between fear and anger in the case of small dogs. Sorry, completely off topic. So at this one instant in time, what can we expect? 9 times 6. Into math. 0.9 times points. Oh, no, not 0.9. 0.95 times 0.6. That's 57%, right? So 9 times 6 is 54, in case anyone asks. So how are these two things related? They're related by being 57%. So there's a 57% chance at any one time, outside my window, a dog barks and a car is driving at the same time. And that is greater than 50, right? Let's remember, if we come back here, our conspiracy-laden branch B has a 51.2 chance of happening, and the reality has a 60% chance of happening. And yet more people will choose this because branch B it seems so much more probable. And so that's exactly the same thing that's happening here. This event of a small dog barking and a car driving past my window, that's a 57% chance of happening. But what that really means is that if I were to have a easy way of doing a table here. I'll just say it out, and then we'll be done for today. What this essentially means is that 57% chance is still higher than 50. So if I were to sit beside my window and just from pure first principles count the occasions at which a small dog barks and a car drives by, I would have to say that, hey, look, these two things are somehow linked together because they happen more than the average amount of times, right? And so that's where say forget it. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is that with 57% chance, you are able to then use this data, use these coincidences, and generate something that looks very, very much realistic, should we say? No, maybe not realistic. You're able to use this data to generate something that looks like it could be that there could be correlation. Yes, that's what I want to say. Correlation does not equal causation. Actually, let me just get one thing and share it on here. There's a site that is really like when I first started my graduate school career. It's called Spurious Correlations, and essentially it uses statistics to show the most ridiculous correlations that exist. Let me just pull it up. Come on, why are you not giving me this? Hello? No, my computer is not behaving. Just give me 1 second. Show me my yes. I'll just take these two and show them off because it is simply mind-boggling what statistics can show you. Right? Okay, are we ready? Good. So just zooming in, right? Let's only look at the top one. US spending on science, space, and technology versus suicides by hanging, strangulation, and suffocation. Yes. Okay, maybe this one is kind of correlated. No, it is correlated, but it is not causative. So this one, there could be correlations, absolutely, but yes, I know you saw the second one. I wanted to not do the second one yet. But so this one does look like it could be correlative simply because better economy or higher economy, higher population counts, and this is not per capita, right? If this were per capita, we would actually see that this is no longer a correlation, and so there is no causation. And again, right, like this is tricks to use statistics to make things look significant. Look at the correlative factor. If I got this in my experiments, my supervisor would shoot me because this would simply not be a thing. This would never happen in modern science. The second one, yes, the second one that we really want to talk about. A number of people who drowned by falling into a pool. It correlates pretty well with films that Nicolas Cage appeared in, right? Like let's be honest. Yes, I know I got completely off topic with the statistics thing. Well, I mean, it's still statistics. Yes. We are going to do more of these in the future. Yes. We're going to mostly Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays where I get to choose what we do. We'll probably do a little bit more, human philosophy. We'll do a little bit more fun with statistics, I guess, something along those lines. Yeah. Yeah, definitely suggest topics if you guys want me to talk about them, and then actually we can also vote on. actually, actually, is our administrator here? No, she's not. Yeah, you guys are all saying the same thing about a film Nicolas Cage has appeared in. It's I've never seen any of them, so I wouldn't know. Um, our administrator's not here, but there could be an interesting case for us actually opening this up for votes as well. We'll talk about that offline. Yeah. Anyway, we're done for today. There's no more words left to be said. Forget the coincidences; those aren't important. Right, like this is it. Do we have any questions, concerns, desires? No. Make this into a series. I should turn this into a series. Ooh. Yeah. We'll talk about it. Anyway, that's it for today. Yes. Thank you very much for watching. Final questions, concerns? No. I wouldn't imagine you guys have any concerns. Good. And that's it. Yes. We're good. Yeah, let me know, and we'll talk about it offline. But this is it, right? And this is what Occam's razor is. And Occam's razor is supremely important for this very reason. Are we good? Good. Okay. Oh yes, download Firefox. Don't do Chrome. Chrome is terrible. Please don't. Right? All right. Okay. Bye.